Good evening, everybody. I just want to make sure that everyone can see my screen and hear me. If you guys could just press the hands up button, that'll just tell me that you guys can hear me right, and you guys can also see my screen. Fantastic, great. Okay, a bit of a drop from last week. We only have a few people who've joined the webinar today, but there's a fair bit to cover, so I'm gonna get going. Okay, so we've got due diligence, which is part of the Delta method. Last week we covered all the property economics and why do we select a certain suburbs and the things that we need to look at for the suburb. So today we're going to look at all the different factors that we need to consider when we are zeroing in on a site. So let's keep going. Okay. So here's what we're going to learn today. We're going to look at the preliminary assessment, location, demographic, gap analysis, demand and supply, the highest best possible use, and a whole lot of other factors that we need to consider before we get into the site and after we got into the site. I don't think I'll have time to cover everything because I have like a 50-minute video that I have on an actual site that I'm developing right now, and I've recorded it separately where I've looked at different issues and used it as an example. Okay, we have a few latecomers who've joined us, which is pretty good. And what I'll do is I'll go through a fair bit today, cover most of the slides that I've got, show you some examples, answer any questions and everything. But apart from that, I will also post another second video in Facebook, so you guys can have a look and watch that video and understand from where we're coming from. And after this, if you have a particular site that you want to discuss next Thursday, which again is going to be an issue for me to find the time to discuss it, but nonetheless, shoot it to me, send me the site, send me everything that you found about the site, and I will pick up that example of your site in the next Thursday's class. Because next Thursday it is either going to be financial feasibility or development finance. Usually it doesn't matter what comes first, but both need to be looked at. I would prefer to have financial feasibility next week, but there's a surprise that I haven't announced that I'm waiting for. And if everything works out fine, I haven't heard back from whoever I need to hear back. And if everything goes well, then I will have a surprise for you guys next week. That's an unannounced bonus. I like to over deliver, and that's what I'll do next week. But for whatever reason, if that portion isn't ready, then I might have to switch the class for financial feasibility and push it to the next one. But in any case, I will cover the theory behind financial feasibility and everything next week. Okay, so let's keep going. So Warren Buffett once said, it's better to be approximately right than to be precisely wrong. And the whole idea about doing due diligence is to be approximately right with everything that we know. This is what you need to know about due diligence. Different sites will have different issues. There is no developer in the world who's come across every issue that there is out there, because in most times every site will have different issues that they will need to come up with. Even lawyers, even property lawyers, they've read about an issue somewhere when they were doing their law, but this is not something that they come across every day. So there are certain things that they come across every day, which is the bread and butter stuff for them. But if they come across something that they haven't seen for, they also need to go and discuss and consult other people or refer to other law books. So you have to think of it like Excel. If any one of you have used Excel, when you started using Excel spreadsheets, it was very difficult. You didn't understand what it was, and then if you got better at it, you probably got to a level where you understood. Okay, I understand most of it, how it works. What's a VLOOKUP function? What's an if-then function? How these things work. But now if I come across something that I need to do in Excel, I know how to look it up. I can look it up on the internet, find out how it's done, and go from there. So due diligence is like that. So you're made aware of different kind of issues that can arise with the site, And what you need to do is be prepared and understand, okay, that's the kind of issue that I come across. That's the consultant I need to go and see in order to solve that issue. So let's keep going with site selection and the preliminary assessment. So when we do our due diligence, before we get in the site, we need to actually start with who is going to buy the end product. Now, I know that this is going to sound very silly. Everybody knows, yeah, this is the family. Everyone's doing 2-bedroom townhouses or 2-bedroom apartments, and that's what I should do. But you really need to look into demographics. That's why last week, all the 2 classes that we had, I showed you that site, economy.id and everything. And if you wanted to find out, to really understand and sink your teeth into the kind of demographics that you are dealing with, every now and then I do come across permits that are just incorrect permits. And these sites come to us and they want the world for the site just because they've got a permit. But it turns out that the permit is wrong. In a family area, they've gone and developed 2-bedroom townhouses and doesn't cut it. And they won't move as fast. So they become an investor product. Then you have to see how many investors do we have in that area. So all those things matter. Now for small and medium-sized boutique developments, that's not an issue because our aim is to actually do small, medium-sized developments and we can flip and we can move, but these issues become more apparent as you get better, and you will get better as you start doing better and bigger developments. So, and the reason I ask you to look at all these things from the very beginning is because it gives you that much confidence every time you're moving forward. Every time you're in a deal, you'll be questioning yourself. So much money is at stake. You will be questioning yourself, would this work? Would that work? Will I get my money's worth, or will the project stack up, or will I realize the amount that I'm getting for? So all this legwork up front that I'm asking you to do will give you that confidence because you are not going into a project willy-nilly. So you got to find out what's already being built in the neighborhood. I would go to all opens, all developers who've got products on the market. I'll go and find out what they're selling for, get their contract of sale, see their specifications, what are they offering, what are they selling, what are the square meter rates. All those things have to be done, and you have to look into that. And I'll give you an example. I'll see if I can give you an example on something like that. Sorry, I just thought of this example because the other day I was doing exactly the same thing, and I found out those details about different developers, what they were doing, and yeah. So if you guys can see the screen, we've got, this is 435 Main Street. This is one of the projects that I'm doing right now. It's going into planning very soon. It's going to be 3-bedroom, but these are not the numbers from there. What it is like I've gone and found out different people, different other developers who are doing stuff. So I figured out what their price per square meter was. So they've sold these units, or they're trying to sell these units. Their configuration is 322, 221, 221, 332. Block size, I couldn't get those details, but internal sizes I got the external sizes, I got the garage, I got the total size, and then I figured out what the square meter rate was, what the total plus garage was, and then I've gone and done that on various different developments just to figure out what the square meter rate is going to be in that area. So in here I saw they were all over the place. Some were really bad developments, some were 4,700, then 2,500, and then you got to make a call that with respect to my location, where I am, where this the kind of product I'm developing, and you got to say, no, my product is going to be about $6,000 square meter. It's not going to be top of the line, which is $7,000 and $8,000 square meter. it is going to be $6,000 a square meter, and I know that from the specs that I'm going to put in, or the details that I'm going to, or the kind of level of finish that I'm going to give. I do actually, as a matter of fact, I do not develop anything that's under $5,000 a square meter, because that's just crap market. I'm not in that market at all. I'm usually not super high end. But I am mid to high range kind of way, because the products that we develop are not crap, and if you compare them with all the other developments that go on all there, I reckon our quality is really, really good. So who are the builders operating in that area? You got to find out, because those builders are the ones that, if you start shortlisting and you start keeping an eye, if you just become active, I would go and see and look at a site and say, okay, 123 James Street, Morialec, whatever. Have a look at that address and see, okay, XYZ builder has started building this thing. Mark down the date when they started building it, and see what they are building. 3 townhouses, even if you are not doing anything, and put it in your Excel spreadsheet, and keep an eye, or go and set the Google alert for that, and see anytime that pops up, and then update it 3 months, 6 months, 4 months, 8 months down the track, just to see that this builder probably took 8 months to build 4 townhouses, or is he still building? I remember this morning we had an agent come in from Hawking Stewart, and he was telling us about this block of land which had only 2 townhouses, and the builder's taken 2 years to build two units. And you have to be super duper careful with how builders, the time builders take, and the things that you got to look out for in your contract. And the thing is, when it's your home contract, it's fine. You can read it, you can scrutinize it, everything is good. But when you're doing a development, timelines becomes very crucial. And I always, if I'm dealing with another builder, like for example in Brisbane, I dealt with another builder, I always hired a construction law specialist lawyer to go through my contract and flag out different things, and we went back on the table to renegotiate those things with the builder, because you don't want the build contract to be one-sided. What builders tend to do is sign a contract with you guys and then have 36 months and 60 months and things like that in the contract to build and deliver. And you're basically, the developers is basically bleeding every day in holding costs. So you have to see that if you start and if you do everything, they just got to finish it in time, and you got to hold them accountable to it. So what is the design intent in the local area? Okay, this is determining what kind of townhouses or units are being designed in your area. So it could be reverse. What is it called? Reverse living, where usually happens close to the beach areas, and it happens a lot in the areas that I work in. So where the lounge and everything is on the first floor, so people can take advantage of the views, and the actual bedrooms are actually on the ground floor, because there aren't any views over there. So where they actually spend most of the time, their living areas and everything are usually on the first floor. And you have to see, depending upon the area where it is, if this area demands a study nooks, or a little bit of a study, or storage in the garage. These are the kind of things that you've got to take note of when you go and visit other people's developments. So what is the demand for such designs in your area? You got to find out, and you can find that out by actually just going to these different properties that are already on the market, or different opens, or start talking to different agents. Your agents, I know nobody likes to deal with them. I also don't like to deal with them, but not all agents are bad. I've actually come across a couple of agents who've been very diligent in what they do, and I would vouch for them. And they don't really try and pull all kind of stunts on you. Although I do have come across a lot of agents who do try and pull out different tricks in the books on you, and they try and push you up. Even bigger companies like I don't want to name any company because some I don't know sometimes they come and sue me for nothing. But big names which are all over the country, even their agents try all these tricks on developers to get the price. Although they say they don't try and like they for example they will tell you that I can't reveal the price to you, but I won't accept your offer under 3.2 million. So okay, you can't reveal someone else's offer to me, but you won't accept a price under 3.2 million. And I don't understand. By law, no matter what offer I give, 3.1 or 2.9, they've got to take that offer to the vendor. So you'll come across such things, and it's like you can't really do anything about it. You just have to deal with it. What would be the end value of townhouses and apartments? That's what you need to determine. That's what I was trying to show you in the Excel spreadsheet. What is the rent in the current market for a new townhouse versus an old property? Very important, because towards the end, we all have to do this scenario which is the worst case scenario or the fire sale scenario, where if you were to hold this, what would you be able to actually rent it out for? And you have to see if a 4-bedroom old house is available for $450 a week for rent. What is a brand new townhouse available which is comparable to it, which is also 4-bedroom, or compare the 3-bedroom old house with the 3-bedroom new townhouse or a 3-bedroom apartment, and see what the rents are. And you'll find that a brand new property will always attract a premium rent. The reason is that you need to see that if you were to hold this thing, or if you were to hold this unit for yourself as your profit and roll over your profit, have all your equity in there, and then put that on rent, that adds to your serviceability, then be able to get an offset account, offset facility against that property, to be able to go and extract the property and do it again. And you still have to do those numbers and see. So always make sure that you find out what the rent is. What are some comparable sales in the area? We'll get into a lot more detail to this later on. Okay, I only operate in this area. I don't go beyond these things. I don't go beyond. I don't try and do new stuff. I just stay in short things. So I only do infill developments, although I'm looking at a subdivision right now. But I have to be sure about subdivisions before I actually get into it. In fact, we may not get into it, only because subdivisions take a very long time to turn around. They are very lucrative, but you got to have a lot of cash to be able to support the entire process right till the end. So, yeah. So, public transport is a site close to train station, bus stop, freeways, highways, etc. Everyone needs to go to work, and most Australians still rely on public transport to commute to work. The closer your development site is to public transport, the quicker you will be able to sell it at the end of your development. So you'll see that most of my developments are very close to public transport or amenities or schools or lifestyle. So I just don't. So I will never pick up a site, even if it's in a very good suburb. I'll give you an example. Where I operate is Mordialloc, but I don't go in the inner Mordialloc. So like I won't go 2 kilometers away from where the main market is. I just won't. No matter what that property is or what that price is, I just won't go that far away, because I want to make sure that what I'm developing moves quickly, because if a developer is sitting on the stock that they've developed, they're losing money. And for that reason, I don't mind paying a little bit more for the land, but I know for sure that what I develop here, what I put here, will move. So it could be on the market for maybe 90 days, but it'll move. It's not going to be that I'll be stuck with this area. So I don't know. In good areas, you will never find a property, somebody developed a property, unless they developed a really bad product, or unfit for the market. You will never find look at your area or find an area where all these things are ticked, right? And look at a property, a brand new townhouse or a brand new something that came on the market and has been on the market for a year and no one's bought it. Unless it's an apartment and there's an oversupply in the city, which I'm not asking you guys to go and do at all. So if you stick to these thumb rules and these main principles, you will not go wrong. You will not get stuck in these things. So this is again a way to actually de-risk the project. Schools and education facilities. Young families prefer to live close to schools. Again, this could mean shorter days on the market when selling your new developed townhouses. Activity centers, shopping areas, shopping centers all fall under activity centers. So it could be a shopping strip. Be careful of shopping strips where the thing is that I don't know about all the other cities, but I know that in Melbourne, for example, Richmond, the Bridge Road, if people are familiar, people who are from Melbourne and are familiar with Bridge Road, I've seen Bridge Road from a very vibrant road, and that's just going back 20 years. I'm pretty sure before 20 years it would have been even more vibrant. But in the 20 years that I have been in Melbourne, I've seen Bridge Road go from a really vibrant road and now just basically fall to shit. Almost every excuse me my French, I've seen so many for sale signs and for lease signs go up. It's like all the shops are empty. And the same thing has happened in Camberwell, where there were strips of streets where there were so many retail shops and everything. Overall, I've seen if you're not in a shopping center, it's very hard to actually attract a lot of foot traffic. If you are in a shopping center, people prefer going to a shopping center than they prefer going to a shopping strip, especially in Melbourne, because Melbourne has 9 to 10 months of winter. We are officially in spring, but gosh, it's freezing here in Melbourne right now. So in Melbourne, I've seen, I'm not certain if this is the same story with Brisbane or Sydney or Adelaide or not, but I know that in Melbourne, a lot of shopping strips have started to die off. So just be careful. Being next to a shopping strip doesn't really mean. What you have to see is what is the key driver there. So is there a train station there? Is there a main? There's got to be some sort of a public hub over there that gets people in there. So if you see a lot of for lease signs and a lot of shops that are empty, that doesn't mean that having property close to that area would necessarily benefit. So just be careful. If you go to Geelong, for example, I went to Geelong and I was really sad because Geelong, the whole city, after Ford closed down, and now they are planning to create a tech hub where the Ford factory used to be. And where did I find this out? Just by Google Alerts, just by having all these alerts set up that I explained last time. So what they've done this time, what they've planned for hasn't really been executed as yet. What they plan for is they're going to create a tech hub and create that Melbourne to Geelong corridor as an incubator tech hub where they get all these tech startups to come in and they incubate them and then they send them to US and all those things. So there's a new thing that's been developing, and I've been looking into it as a cash flow kind of system, but I've not been able to do my numbers properly because I don't understand the tech industry as much as I understand property. There's a lawyer that I work with, and he told me that he's into tech like almost full time, and he's an immigration lawyer on the side. And he mentioned to me that these days you get $400 a month from one table, and each table sits one young whiz kid, one of those smart tech whiz kids in their 20s or early 20s, and they're developing an app, or they're working on something to disrupt the industry, and they work there, and it's $400 a table. And then if you can get 30 of those kids or have 30 tables over there, provide them internet, provide them vending machines with soft drinks and water and a little bit of snack and everything, and give them an environment where they can come in and keep working, and incubate them, you can get $400 a table. So that's a lot of money if I can get 30 tables at a warehouse and give them internet. But it's got to be close to public transport and all of that, and you can get some funding from the government. I have not been able to put it together, but it is out there. That's what they are proposing in Geelong. And Geelong, I've seen, again, from a vibrant city in the last 20 years, has died out after Ford closed its door in Geelong. Okay, time to walk away. Do not look for a development site in Whoop Whoopville unless you know what you are doing and have had some experience under your belt. So in other words, don't do new estates or new developments unless you know what you are doing, because for most of you it's going to be your first or second development, and you want to make sure that you get that confidence. It's like if you're a boxer, you get into a boxing match, and to get your confidence up, you fight with somebody you can take on. You don't fight with Mike Tyson on day one. So you want to make sure that you get that confidence under your belt and you win the fight. So as a novice developer, don't try and be the first in an area. Council can hit you with a lot of unnecessary infrastructure upgrades and kill the deal. Demographics, I won't go into too much detail with this because we discussed that in a lot of detail last week. Determine the population and future growth of the area. Find out the age group of various households. Most importantly, does the suburb mostly consist of owner-occupied properties and or is investor-driven? Time to walk away. If during your due diligence you find that the suburb consists mainly investment properties, that is not a lot of owners live there themselves, stay clear. And this is exactly what happened in mining towns. If for some reason you see a decline in population in a suburb over past years, find out the reason why before you invest in that suburb. Okay, gap analysis. Simply put, gap analysis is the difference between the demand and supply of the product you are looking to develop in that area. It is also about understanding the market drivers. So if you can determine household growth, and ABS has a lot of data on this, income, affordability, comparing renters versus buyers, we explained these last week. You can determine the demand in a particular area and then compare this data with the council's pipeline data for development applications. And I'll show that to you a little bit later. Time to walk away. If your demand is low and you see a huge list of development applications on your council's website, it's time to walk away. Every council, if you go to their website and go into their town planning department, on their website would most probably have a list of all the applications that are in there. Now, every council has a website that they control and run in the way that they want to do it. For example, the one that I deal with, it's Kingston City Council, and the website would not show me a full list of all the applications that are in there. But if I put in a town planning application number in there, it'll show me the details, which doesn't really solve my purpose, and that's why I've got to use a third-party service called Cordell that shows me all the development applications that are in there. But for Brisbane, for example, I know that Brisbane City Council has a list of all the applications that are in there. I know that Monash does the same. In Melbourne, Monash City Council would give you a full list of all the developments that are in there. Even planning applications for a restaurant to put 4 chairs outside on the footpath on the council area. So even from applications like that to putting a hoarding or putting a board to townhouse subdivision applications. But the problem is that all that data is mixed up. Like it's it's mixed up. It's not like you'll find proper cells with proper details that you can filter in Excel pretty quickly. You just have to go through that data and start to do that process manually. I mean, even Cordell doesn't let you actually export data out. In that it'll show you certain things on the map, and it'll show you all those things, but it will not export it out in Excel. Which is what I really like, because then I can do all sorts of analysis on that data. But you got to compare that with and see what you were planning to develop on a particular site, and see what are the applications that are already in there. And you can open those applications, you can check out who is the architect on those drawings. You'll be able to see the drawings, you'll be able to see every detail that's in there. What are they proposing, the size of their townhouses, the size of their ground floor, the size of their first floor. It's like espionage to the highest level, and it's made available to you. And if you see a planning application like the yellow sign that goes out, which is advertising, town planning advertising, that goes out outside a site, it'll have a town planning number on it. Get that number, go to the site of that council, put in that number, and you'll be able to see all the plans, everything that they've submitted to the council. And if you want to object, you can object, but don't object, because you're a developer yourself. One day you'll be developing and someone will object and you won't like it. So do unto others as you would want others to do to you, because you'll find a lot of other objectors in your journey. They are part and parcel of this industry. You just have to deal with them. Time to walk away. If your demand is low and you see a huge list of development applications on your site, it's time to walk away. If you come across a site for sale with plans and permit for 2-bedroom townhouses, and your gap analysis shows that the demand for that there is a demand for 3-bedroom townhouses, as the suburb is dominated with young families, you just be careful that you don't want to develop 2-bedroom townhouses. I would never develop 2-bedroom anything close to a school. If it's within 1 kilometer of a school, any school, whether it's primary or secondary, but it's got to be a school. If it's there, I will never ever develop a 2-bedroom unit there, whether it's townhouse or an apartment, no matter what you do. And the reason for that is fairly simple. People who wants to live close to the school, all schools have school zones. Whether a school is famous or not, it doesn't matter. Whether or not a lot of people want to move to that school, it doesn't matter. Every school has a zone allocated to it. So if you live in a particular street, you can only go to that school. So always be careful that if you're within at least 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers of a school, or more, actually go to the school and find out what the school zone is. Map that school zone on your Google Maps, and I'll show you today how to do all of that. And make sure that if you're in that area, never ever develop a 2-bedroom unit. 2-bedroom units are really good if you are right next to an activity center or a train station or a public transport area, because the young families would live there, or young couples would be there, which may not have kids or may have very young kids that don't go to school or don't go to creches yet, but they need to go to work every day. And for them to make a start, 2-bedroom units is pretty good. Okay, this is how the demand and supply analysis works. Now, you don't have to go very pedantic and be anal about this, because a lot of this is the same process is followed for massive developments. Like if you're going to put in house 600 people in a new building or somewhere, you would have to do this. Now you don't have to do this, but if you ever had to do this, this is how the process is. So you've got to gather a lot of data. And you have to go to ABS population, get the population data for that area, get the ABS income data for that area, find out the sales record, find out what the development pipeline is. So if you got all that data, your second port of call from there would be to do a demand analysis. You find out the household growth. What has the number of houses that have grown in that area? Compare that with your population, compare that with your household income. And what will happen is that you will see disaggregate growth. Like it could be growth in 2-bedroom units, or it could be a growth in 3-bedroom units, but you'll have to identify by looking at that data. And then you'll have to see the housing affordability. So if everything is within an affordable range as compared to the household income, it's a goer. It's no problem at all. And you'll see that usually, for example, I've studied some of the areas that I live in and operate in, and that's why I use their examples. Like Glen Waverly and Mount Waverly, you'll find people are usually over 44, 45. So even if they have a job, they've reached a certain level where they are at 150K or 160K a year kind of bracket. And if they are professionals, that's where they will be. So they can afford $1 million house in that area. And you'll find that if it's a fairly new suburb, which is a little bit away from the city, you'll find that people over there are in that $80,000 to $90,000 a year kind of bracket, and they can afford a 600K or 500K unit in that area. So you'll see that, and if there are two people working, then it becomes 150K, but they're still, because they are young people, they don't necessarily want to live over there. They still want to start their family and so on. So you'll find it just becomes apparent. Supply analysis, you have to identify where the demolition is happening. Now this is the data that I've not been able to find out where that is, but I'm pretty sure that that building construction activity that we spoke about can be found out from at the suburb level, but I've not been able to figure out where do I get this data for free. I'm pretty sure there are paid sources. Even RP Data could provide all this data for a fee, but I've not been able to find a source that'll give me demolition activity in a suburb for free. So I have to apologize, but I tried my best to find a source so I could show you how. You got to identify construction, determine the net supply. So that construction is going to come from your development pipeline, because the development pipeline, once you analyze the data and filtered everything out, you'll be able to see, okay, 2-bedroom units in the council right now. So you can give them 12 months. If they've already been in council, you'll have a lodge date in that. So from the lodge date, if you're in Melbourne, add 12 months. Find out how long does it take in your council typically for a typical thing. Add 12 months to it, or add 9 months, whatever your council typical turnaround time is to get a DA or get a permit. And then add 3 to 4 months on it before the construction starts. And then you'll reach a timeline, or you'll reach a month, for example. So if you start today and you add 10 months to it, and then 4 months for to get the finance, get the building permit, get the ball rolling and everything, and I add 14 months from today, I know that next year, sometime in November, December, I will have all these projects starting. That'll give me an indication that is that the time that I want to start, or do I want to time my development to overshoot the time that they're going to start, or come in a little bit early before they're going to start. So all these things you have to think about. Then you have to basically measure the gap, demand less supply, review historical sales data, fit product to conditions. But you don't have to be that pedantic and go in that much detail, but it can be done if you wanted to. Okay, post-selection process. Highest best possible use. What's the highest best possible use? What it basically means is about maximizing the development capacity of land. So based on the zoning, based on all the different things that work for a particular site, what is the maximum that you can put on that site? That is called the highest and best possible use of land. It's about maximizing the development capacity of land or property while playing under the rules of RESCO, zoning, and overlays. And it's determining what the number of units, townhouses, apartments you can fit on a block of land in order to make the development viable. Time to walk away. Don't become adamant about pushing the boundaries with council. Just because your feasibility does not show a profit with 4 townhouses, don't try and squeeze in a 5th one. It will only delay your application and you could end in VCAT or waiting for your planning permit for eternity. And I will get into more details with this. Highest and best possible use. Okay, this is a definition that I found somewhere and I don't remember where. I probably read in a book that I put there. The reasonable, probable, and legal use of property that is physically possible, appropriately supported, and financially feasible, and that results in highest value. So the highest and best possible use of a block can be determined by adding value, and we'll discuss the value stages, maximizing development capacity, what you can put on it, and the council plans, which is the zoning, overlays, and res codes. So how else can you add value to a block of land? You can change the use of land, you can subdivide the land, you can build improvements on the land, you can do renovations on it, and change legal arrangements, usually leases, to increase the income a property produces. So these are the different value stages. If you were to start adding value to a land and you rezone it and you prepare the site, you do your construction, you realize your profit, and the site will have a different use altogether from what it did. Now this would work if you had a site with just one house on it and you went and got a permit and you build the construction on it and then you realize your profit. Now the site would have 4 townhouses or whatever you develop. So at every stage that you move forward, you will start adding value to to the land. But before I go, this maximum development capacity, I've got to show you something else, and that something else is, give me 1 second, I'll open the Excel spreadsheet. This is basically, I'll give you this calculator, and I've added that to the calculator I gave you last week. So what this is this is a combination of res codes and everything. So actually I should wait before I discuss this. So we've got, I'll discuss it in a second. Maximum development capacity. You've got res codes, you've got zonings, and you've got overlays, and that give you the planning schemes, and we'll get into it in a second. But the moment you got details from res codes, zonings, and overlays, what will happen is you'll have to do something like this, which is you'll have to come up with an FSR. You'll have to find out what the FSR for the land is. Now FSR stands for floor space ratio, and GFA stands for gross floor area. So what will happen is, if let's say you've got a site that has, a lot of people will already know this, but this is for people who are just starting in property development, and when I didn't know anything. That's why this is in the course. If a block of land is 1,000 square meters, and your council says you got 60% coverage, what they're basically saying is that you got 60% floor space ratio. That means on a 1,000 square meter block, you can build on 600 square meter. So that can be covered, like 600 square meter can be covered. Now what they've done in Melbourne is that they've thrown a spanner in the works, that they now say that you've got to have, we still allow you to build over 60% of the land, but you've got to have 35% garden. Now you figure that out. How does that work? They're saying, oh, we're not changing the res code. Go and build on 60% of the land, but show us how you're going to give us 35% garden area. And what that is doing now is that all that plan is changing, and everyone's digging a basement. So we go under the site and we still have a garden on top of it to comply with the 35% garden rule and still be able to build on and maximize the site. So those things are happening. If you're from Sydney, most probably you will find that they don't work from a percentage. Percentage is very common in Brisbane and Melbourne. and you'll find it. And this is not a hard and fast rule. Some council could give that FSR to you in a ratio. So in Sydney especially, I have seen with different councils, you get an FSR. So FSR could be, let's say, 2:1. So what does that tell you? When you say 2:1, there's a formula already put in there. If it's 2:1, that means that you can build twice as much as the land area, but it will still have the setbacks. It will still have everything. But what this instantly tells me is that this is a high density site. If it says 0.5, you'll normally find 0.5 to 1. That means you can build on 500 square meters of land, or it could be 0.6:1. It means nothing. It's the same. It means 60% land coverage. But I found these that FSRs on council websites in New South Wales are sometimes given as 1.5:1. So what this is telling me instantly is that this is an apartment site, because on this side it's higher density. I can cover 1,500 square meters of floor space, and that basically, now I can't cover that on a 1,000 square meter block anyway, but that means I can go higher up. So on these sides you'll find that the height allowed in that area would be a lot higher. Okay, let's continue with the rest codes. Okay, so where do we find all of these? And let's look at this. Now this is a site in Victoria where you can, it's called land.vic.gov.au, and it's all, okay, 1 second. Now, actually I skipped a step. What can I fit? Which was gross floor area, plot ratio. This is what I just explained to you using this calculator that you will get, and what you need to allow for. And for for townhouses, it's very simple. If you've got 800 square meter block, what you do is, let's say 800, and you can do 60% on it, so 480. Now earlier I used to allow 200 square meters as a footprint for a townhouse, because they used to be all 3-bedders and everything. But this has changed, and now on an 800 square meter block, usually I can get away with 3, or if I put a basement I can get away with 4, and so on. But it depends upon the height and all those things. So yeah, and for apartments, if you find a site that you think, this is ideal for apartment, it's got higher density and everything, you will not be able to figure out the yield yourself unless you are an architect. You just can't. No course will teach you that. Only a 6-year degree for architecture would probably teach you how to be able to do that, and even then it'll require you to work under another architect to be able to figure that out, how that would work. So for that, I will just show you what they look like. So what happens is, if a site lends itself to be developed for an apartment, this is what's going to happen. You'll have to go to an architect, and you'll probably have to involve maybe a town planner, and you go to them and you say, look, I've got this site that I want to develop, and I want to figure out what I can actually put on it. So this is in layman's terms, this is known as yield. What is the yield of the site? The yield is the highest best possible use, and what I can extract from it. How many townhouses or how many apartments can I actually put on it? So that finding out that yield is super duper important. So when you go to an architect and give them your brief, they will look at the res code, and they will look at the different regulations, the zonings and the overlays and everything, and maybe consult the town planner if the site is complex. and then tell you that, look, this is how we're going to draw it, this is how big each apartment is going to be, but then we'll have this space left, maybe we can put storage over there, maybe we can put stackers in the basement, or we'll have a basement car park and this, that, and all of that. And they will come up with what is known as a yield. Now this is for a site in Frankston that we worked on in 2015. We spent $35,000 on due diligence on this site and we got nothing. And I'm proud to say we got nothing. We ended up wasting $35,000. But the site was a $50 million site. We had an option on the site for 12 months, but the project was far too big to be able to do that within that 12-month period. Even to get through the council and everything. We tried to renew the option for another 2 years so that we could get 3 years, but the landowner wouldn't let us, and we paid $0 to get that option for 1 year. If we would have got somewhere, we would have made a killing, but unfortunately we couldn't get anywhere. We spent a lot of money with consultants and everybody, but it's part of the game. We tried our best, and we learned a lot. Like, I learned heaps from this one trial of how it works for a high-rise. What are the things that you got to look at, and the things that work in a high-rise development. So what you do is you look at these sides, the basement, the tower, and they will start giving you floor area. So see how GFA at floor, this is their gross floor area. They'll give you the subtotal of what it's going to be, and they'll give you the number of car spaces, bike spaces. They'll give you, I can't remember what BOH means. Is the first time I'd seen the I remember what it was, but I can't remember what it was now. It's something, I'll have to find it out. Communal floor. They'll give you NLA. So NLA stands for net leasable area. So this was a mixed use development which had a retail and a commercial, which had a retail layer and then office layer and then apartment layer up top. So it'll give you NLA retail and NLA office floor. And they have different requirements for parking, and then you can go terrace residence, terrace, different. This is like, we had a terrace area, and then we had apartments, and then we had the net saleable area residential that gave us a gross floor area, that gave us a total, and it gave us 1-bedroom units and then 2-bedroom units, what we were going to put on it. So, and the efficiency was 89%. What an efficiency is the GFA and the NSA. So let's say your architect says the total floor area, which is the gross floor area, could be 1,300 square meters. But the net saleable area from that gross floor area, you won't be able to sell the corridors, you won't be able to sell the common areas. If there are common toilets, you won't be able to sell them separately. So you can only sell office space, or you can only sell residential apartment space. You won't be able to sell the lift area or from where people walk to their apartments. So what and it also accounts for the size of the width of the walls that go in. So the gross floor area could be 1,300, but by the time you build everything, you'll see that we managed to achieve 89% efficiency, which is, let's say, 1,300 times 89%. That'll give me that I was able to salvage 89% of the total floor space that I was available, and then I can sell 89% off it. And for you to be able to get your sales figures, you need these kind of data for it. It'll be with the files that you can review in your time. So these are the places where you can actually go and get council plans. This is for Victoria, and I'll show you all these sites. And this is for New South Wales, Queensland, WA, South Australia, and so on. So this is what they look like. So if you go to land.vic.gov.au, here, services land.vic.gov.au, maps.interactive. All these sites are available here, and you ever search for any of these sites, you will be able to find them pretty quick. What you need to do is how to use them and how to make use of them. So I'll give you an example. This is 230. I can put station street. I just have to select each one a little different. Every council site will work a little bit different, and so this is the street, and the suburb is Edithvale, and I can search. Okay, reconnect please. What happened to you? Search again please. So I can select 230 Station Street, go next. So that's the block. I actually have this 230 and 231 Station Street, and I can go next again. Okay, and then I can click on get reports, and then I can select which report that I want to look at. So I usually select the detailed report. I don't want to pay $4. All this is free. You don't need Melbourne Airport report. But if it's a bushfire area, I would want to be able to get that. So I can select these 4, go next, and if I just click on that PDF, it'll just start opening these here. So I can look at the zone, what it is. This shows me the area map. So this is the property report that gives me the lot plan number, the SPI number. It tells me about a little bit of council details, and it tells me that planning zone is general residential zone GRZ, and GRZ schedule 2 or GRZ 2. So now if I want to find out what this is, all I have to do is click on that thing and it'll open and tell me what that is all about. And I can go in and say, okay, general residential area, hey, what can I do over there? Minimum street setback, A3 and B6 not special, standard A3 and B6. So you have to find out what that A3 and B6 is. Where are you going to get this from? You're going to get this from Kingston Planning Scheme, which is the council. You have to go through their planning scheme. You have to go through a plan. It's very easy to find. Don't get overwhelmed with this. Very easy to find. Anybody who can read and write can find this. You get into their website and you figure out, okay, and see how we were talking about site coverage. They're talking about GFA and all of that. Permeability is the area of the site that needs to be the garden or a porous concrete. Like for this site, we are sorry. On this side, we spent extra 40,000, but we've got this paving. Like they had tile paving as the council has suggested tile paving because it keeps the area permeable, so that if the water falls on it, it just gets absorbed through the driveway itself, so it doesn't have to flow through a drain or anything. So what we did here was we used a special material where if the rain falls, there is no overflow, that the water doesn't flow anywhere, it just sinks into the ground, and that kind of thing can be used where you got sand. So it was a little bit more cost, but it worked fine. So they will talk about all of these details in their planning scheme. So if you went to their website, you'll be able to get their planning scheme. So yeah, that's how you get that. If you're in Brisbane, you go to Brisbane City Plan, to the mapping zoning maps, and you can find out the zoning maps for each area. I mean, even here in Brisbane, you can put in you can actually put in overlays. So overlays are a little bit different from zoning. So zoning will tell you, okay, this is residential zoning, but overlay is another layer of governance that works on specific areas. So it could have an overlay of bushfire protection. That means that area is although it has residential zoning, but it is in a bushfire prone area. It could also have an overlay of vegetation protection overlay. That means you're in an area where there's a lot of vegetation and they won't let you chop the trees. It could have a heritage overlay, which basically means that it's a heritage protection area. So if your building looks anything that it will anything like an old building, they won't let you demolish it. That means you are stuck with that facade. On the outside, you got to adhere to certain color schemes. On the outside, you got to have certain bricks, certain you'll have to maintain the facade. And I've seen in Richmond especially, and in a lot of areas where there were old buildings, what they've done is they've done it so incredibly that they've demolished everything inside, and they've got all the four walls of this massive warehouse still standing, which is empty from inside and demolished from inside, because it has a heritage overlay. So from the outside, it'll always look old and would maintain the cultural heritage, but on the inside, it's a brand new, state-of-the-art technology, state-of-the-art construction, design, modern design, and everything. But from the outside, it's got to look heritage. So it would, if that zone would that overlay would stipulate what it is. So if you wanted to read more about this, I am going to send you this document that I've got, which talks more about these details, and you need to study them on your own. I can explain them to you, and if you got queries about it, I will explain them further, but you need to understand them. What is a zone? Residential zones, character residential, low density residential. Now these are all the details that are all available from your council for your area for free. It doesn't cost anything. All you have to be able to do is just read and write, because the more you find out about this stuff, the more you're going to be able to make better decisions when you are doing your development. So let's look at this. You've got Brisbane City Plan 2014, and it's telling you all the different kinds of zoning that they've got. They've even color coded it, so when you search for your site, you'll be able to see what they are. What are overlays? An overlay map, I'll just go plus 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 so you guys can see it. An overlay maps different features that also need to be considered when developing land. For example, flooding, heritage, timber, and thin character. Overlay maps are available in Council Interactive Mapping Tool to help you identify whether or not your property is in an overlay or has particular characteristic, particular characteristic that need to be considered during preparation of your development application. An overlay map may apply to all or part of the property and the property model. Okay, so this is what traditional building character overlay map. You can click on it. You'll have to do a lot of clicks to be able to find what you can, because councils are not the best at putting it together. So if you see, this is the New South Wales Planning and Environment, New South Wales Government, and you can go to planning portal, and you can have a look at these things. Open submission, no, not this. So this is what I was more looking for. Planning environment. What else? I'm not very familiar with the New South Wales side. I'm very familiar with the, but see how this is. I really like this side, the way this is done. This is again in New South Wales. So you can zoom out, or you can click on this thing. I don't know. Can I go any further than this? Click and drag. Okay. So this is the site. I just put in an address that popped up, and it will give me what the zonings are, what the overlays are, and I can then figure out. So this is 66 Harrington Avenue in Castle Hill. I have no idea where this is. I was just typing in some address, and then this popped up, and I can look at which is the different things. Track your okay, understand planning. So it's just that I'm just not very familiar with the way the site works, so I'm not able to take these things out, but I can show you maybe here. I'll show you another zoning map. This is from Victoria, and this is what I wanted to explain to you instead of trying to figure out my way around the New South Wales side. So this is just for 13 Abdel Street in Frankston 3199. It gives me the details. So it tells me that it's a commercial zone and scheduled to commercial 1 zone. that'll give me, this is the site that I searched, and these are the different color codes for different zonings that are there. Now anytime, as I said, if you wanted to find out what this does, you click on it and it will open another site that will tell you what it actually does. Apparently there's only one page, it's got no details, but let's keep going. Commercial zone 1, if I click on it, okay, I found something. So here it'll tell me that I can put childcare center, accommodation, cinema, education center. Because it's commercial, this is what I can do: informal outdoor recreation, home occupation, office, a leasable floor area can be put over there. I can put a place of worship. What else can I do? Well, I can have an adult sex bookshop there. Must be at least 200 meter. Agriculture, other than that, what else can I get? Use of land. Use must not detrimentally affect the amenity of the neighborhood, including through the transport of material goods, blah blah blah. So you can read all of this, and it'll always tell you the kind of things that you can do, cannot do, and what requires a permit or won't require a permit. So let's go further on this. Again, this is planning overlay. So this is a design and development overlay. So let's see what that says. Now this is very common. DDO is usually a favorable overlay. That means the council wants you to develop it, or it is pro-development on that area, on that site, in that zone, in that overlay. So it's basically telling me to implement the state planning policy framework. So we spoke about the state planning policy framework, which you can find about the Melbourne 20 plan and whatever the new planning that the state planning department has come up with. So we did that last week, where you could find these details about the full city of where you live or what's going to happen. So that means that they are saying, if you want to increase density here, if you want to increase population of the number of people who live there, please by all means do that. So that means they will be pro-development in that area. Permit is required to construct a building. Permit is required building setback, height, plot ratio. Plot ratio is the same. I gave you the calculator for it. So these are the things. That's an overlay. Again, it also has a special building overlay. What does that mean? So let's click on it and find out what it means. I'm not a town planner, and neither will you be, and no developer would know all these things by heart. All they have to do is click, read more as soon as you come across a particular site that has a certain overlay already there. So to ensure development maintains the free passage and temporary storage of flood waters, minimizes flood damage, is compatible with flood hazard and local drainage conditions, and will not cause any significant rise in flood level or flow velocity. So that's what that special plan is. That means they might ask you to have a stormwater retention system put in there. They might ask you to put pumps in it in case you're putting a basement, so that if it floods, it doesn't let it flood, it actually pumps the water out automatically. So they could, these are the things that you need to find out in your due diligence. If you're going to do something there, you need to say, okay, the construction might be a little bit dearer than normal because look, you know, I've got to keep in mind that it could be flooding, it could be all the other things. So there are different things that could come into play and impact your construction costs. So if I ever came across this, I wouldn't know all the things that would be required for construction in this. So what I would be doing is I would be reading this for sure, highlighting it, and then sitting with my architect and saying, look, what does this mean? Tell me what I have to do in construction and what they might ask me to do. If they ask me to say they've got to have a stormwater retention system, I have to find out what capacity. And then I have to call a few places, find out what capacity stormwater retention system would it be, how much does it cost, what do I have to allow for extra. All those things, I will keep that in the back of my mind or write them somewhere. It also has a planning overlay, which is an environmental significance overlay. So let's figure out what that is. And this would be similar or different as you move from one council to another or from one state to another. To implement a state plan to identify areas where the development of land may be affected by environmental constraints. To ensure that development is compatible, we identify so which basically means that they could ask me to get an environmental survey done on something like this so that my new development doesn't have an impact on the environment. What it exactly means, nobody knows. Nobody knows by heart. Nobody would ever know by heart. But you'll have to find out. So this is what we do in due diligence all the time. Areas of Aboriginal cultural heritage sensitivity, I know exactly what this is. Anything in Victoria, I know for sure that is close to a water body will require a CHMP, which is the Cultural Heritage Management Plan. What they do is that the Aboriginals used to bury their dead close to water bodies. So anytime that happens, you need to dig a few holes throughout the site, find out if you find the remains of people who were buried there. That means that you might have to spend a bit more money to get them out and replace it. So anytime I have something like this, I always put that in my contract. I'm doing a site in Seaford, which is right next to the beach, and at the back of it is a creek. So when I signed the contract for the site, I took a 90-day due diligence. So my due diligence doesn't come up until 18th of this month, because I wanted to double, triple sure that the CHMP report comes in my favor. Because if it comes in and tells me the site has a lot of remains that are in there, I can kiss my money goodbye basically. Because it will take time. Because then I have to go and get permission from different departments, and then they have to have someone there to excavate everything, and then everything has to be taken out and taken care of. Oh, it's a lot of hassle. There are companies that specialize in CHMP plans, and I'll explain that when we get into the feasibility as well. So. Okay, let's keep going with this. So council plans and outlines and intensities, site coverage, allowed height, gross floor area, we've discussed that. You got to understand what EP is, which basically means equivalent persons, equal to number of people allowed to reside in a given site area. And a town planner or an architect would be able to give you this information about the site. You don't really have to know this by heart. What you have to know, I've already explained you. Bedrooms, for example, depending upon zoning and allowed density, a site may allow 3-bedroom dwelling or a 2-bedroom dwelling. So, but usually it would depend upon footprints, how the footprints have been worked, and what you can put on it, and the parking constraints on the site. So you got physical characteristic, which is zoning and overlays that we've discussed, because size is the size enough to accommodate 4 townhouses or apartments. Frontage, now this is what I was talking about, that I've created a separate video because I knew that we won't be able to cover. That video is again almost 45-50 minutes long, that talks about the site and everything, and you guys can watch this tomorrow. It will be uploaded in time for tomorrow. You got frontage. So we always look at a site's frontage. Wide enough for your development. Is it wide enough for your development? You may have a fairly large site with a narrow frontage, making it unsuitable for your proposed development. You got to look at site contours. Site contours is a sloping site. So a contour map would tell you whether or not a site has a slope on it or doesn't have a slope on it. And if you are totally new to this, and I know that there are some people in this webinar that are totally new to this, what I want you to do is get into the course where you got access to it. And if you signed up over 2 weeks ago, your due diligence module would have already been unlocked. If it hasn't been unlocked, just shoot me an email and I'll unlock the entire course for you, because we are moving faster than how the course unlocks. So for after the first 14 days, the due diligence module unlocks, and then after 30 days, the entire course unlocks. So what I want you to do is go into your due diligence and look at reading drawings. There's a 20-minute video. It's very basic. Reading drawings is an art, and if you want to understand exactly what it takes, a long time to understand what they are. But if you just want to get your way around so you can get started, because you need something to get started. The reason I actually put this thing in there is because when I started, I couldn't even read the plans. Like, I had no idea what these plans. I mean, I had idea from overseas, but they had different notations. They had different things on it. But when I came here, they had different things, and different things meant different things. I just couldn't get my head around it. So I actually sat with Sam, who's my partner and the builder, and I went through everything to understand what each thing means, so I can have at least some knowledge to see what's going on. So, and I know, and that's the reason I put that in there, because a lot of people who start, there's no shame in admitting that, and I've got no shame in admitting that you don't know what it means. Well, you can just orient yourself how it works, and you can watch this video in here. So flood and bushfire zones, is the site affected by flooding, or does it fall under a bushfire zone? Will that have an effect on the yield or hinder the development potential of your site? Yes. Apart from flooding, if you're from Brisbane, sites often have overland flow, and you got to be careful of that. Local authority, is the local council supportive of the proposed development? Have a preliminary meeting with your council. So what we do is we always have a pre-lodgement meeting with the council. So we'll prepare a concept and have a pre-lodgement meeting with the council and see what they say about it, and then go from there. But that pre-lodgement meeting really means jack, because they've recently done something to us that we went in with 6 townhouses for our side. They said, nah, 6 is too much, go with 5. So we put in the application with 5, we get an objection, council knocks back, and we only get 3. But the good part is we get 3 4-bedders rather than, because you got to constantly, now the whole feasibility just changed. We had to spend 10 grand more on town planning. We had to spend a little bit more on that, so 20,000 or some 25,000 cash blowout, just to be able to appease all the objectors and appease the council. And while they were doing it, that rule came up from 1st of July that you need 35% garden area. Application had already gone in, all that kerfuffle happened, which delayed the permit and everything. And we ended up getting only 3. So it happens, but the good part is it's actually even better, because I've just realized that 3 4-bedders, each 4-bedder in the area is about 1.1 million in median value, and that actually gives us better than to be able to get 6 2-bedders or 6 or 5 2-bedders and so on. Sorry. So physical characteristics is all about soil type. Now this soil type you won't find out, and when we get into the obtaining permits section, I'll tell you when they actually come up. They usually, the soil type would not pop up until you are ready to get your engineering drawings done, or when you are ready to get your building permit, so, or BI. So always remember, town planning is about the footprint of the site and the height of the site. At town planning stage, they do not care what's going to be inside, or what size is going to be, how big it's going to be. They get ballpark things and everything. But what they do care is about what is the footprint of the site, what are the setbacks, how high is it going to be, what is it going to look from outside, is it going to cast shadow on the neighbors. It's all on the external features of it and footprint. But when we get to the building permit, it's all about the internal side of it. How is it going to be built with every detail? So that's why you go to a building surveyor and you don't go back into the council. So you only need 2 permits, a BA and that, but there are all these little permits, reports, things that happen in the middle. So vegetation, contamination, these are all different physical characteristics. This is what you need to understand and get your head around a little bit more. As a thumb rule, every council will be different, but as a thumb rule, remember that if you're making 1-bedroom apartments, first of all, don't make them. They don't sell. But if you got the best yield that you could, and your architect said, look, we could squeeze in one better, squeeze it. But do not develop a building with 1-bedders in them deliberately. Get as many as 2 or 3 bedders as possible, and 1-bedder would be the last choice, because first, getting finance to buy a 1-bedder is a problem, and getting a bank to actually value it is also a problem. So if you can't get finance, even if you keep it, if you can't get finance, other people won't buy it, and even if you kept it, you won't be able to access that much equity from it because it's a 1-bedder. Banks don't look at it in good light, so to speak. So 2-bedders, you've got 1 car. 3-bedders, you've got 2 cars. Apartments work a little bit different. Every council would have a different regulation for this, and that'll dictate how many car parks are you required to put in there. So if you've got apartments that are less than 60 square meters, you would need 0.75 parking bays for every 60 square meter. Take my advice from it. Do not develop anything that's under 60 square meters, because they don't sell as much, and again, they don't get valued as much either. So if you've got apartments that which are between 60 to 80, and they are 2-bedders, they will require 1 car park. If there's a 3-bedroom townhouse or whatever, it will always require 2. If it's a 4-bedroom townhouse, it will also require 2 parking. So as developers, we don't develop 5-bedroom townhouses at all. We usually end up developing 4-bedder with the study and all that, but we don't develop a 5-bedroom townhouse. If you ever wanted to develop that, find out from your architect what the parking requirement is going to be, and he can look up the res code and tell you what it's going to be. Office commercial space, it's a different requirement. So if you are going to build 1,000 square meters over there of commercial space, remember that 4 car bays for every 100 square meter. Now this is from Frankston, and I've seen that it's the same thing applies in Kingston as well, but it will change from council to council. So you will have to always find out what it means. Most mixed-use developments, if you've got a layer of commercial, you'll see that it'll be either retail and then it'll be just apartments on top. So you won't very seldom that you'll find that it's got retail and then commercial, which we try to do in that, and it kills the project because of the number of minimum car parking required for every 100 square meter of commercial space. So yeah. Setbacks, you gotta keep an eye on how far you gotta set yourself back from the sides of the front or the back and so on. I think everybody knows what setbacks are. If you don't, watch the video that we're talking about, and that explains what the setbacks are as well. Easements, special restrictions, cannot build over. You can't build over an easement. Easement is like a dotted line. If you pick up any Section 32 or a disclosure statement that you get that discloses all the titles and everything, you'll see a dotted line at the back of the side or the front or wherever. So that's called an easement, where council might have their assets in that easement. Sorry. And they won't let you actually put a habitable structure on it, so they won't let you build over it. you can get a build over easement permit, but in very rare circumstances, because that area must be accessible by the authorities. Yeah, when you look at the site, you got all these things that I'm discussing here. I've discussed that in some detail in another video that I'm going to put in the that I'm going to put in Facebook page tomorrow. You need a traffic flow. Now, the council may ask for this as a part of permit conditions and say, look, provide engineering report when you go and get the endorsed drawings, or they might ask for this at the planning stage, because before they allow you to increase the density of a site, they want to figure out how the traffic is going to flow in and out of the development, what is the volume is going to be. So site access and egress, they want to figure out how people are going to get in, get out. So poor access, which means increased material handling, which means more cost. You've got council developers contribution. Sorry. The developer's contribution is what you pay the council for using council's facilities. So say for example there was a house on a block of land which was a single house, and all the stormwater, all the sewer and everything connected to the council facilities. But now you got 4 townhouses on it, or now you got 6 or 7 or whatever. Now the council service is already laid in, but the load on them has increased. So the council that's why the council will ask you to pay a contribution so that the council can maintain it and keep it good. Different councils have different way of calculations, but in Victoria it's very straightforward. It's usually if you build 3 townhouses, it's 3% of land value. Up to 5, I think up to 4 is about 4% of land value. Up to 5 is 5%. Anything beyond 5 is also 5% of land value. Very straightforward, very easy. And I've seen all across Melbourne, it is the same, because I have now worked with 3 different councils and all of them had the same way of calculating. So that's the easy part. The most difficult part to get the correct council the council contributions from developers is in New South Wales, because New South Wales has different councils and they do not have a cookie cutter way of arriving at the council contributions. So if you are going to do a development there, I can't give you a formula or something for you to find out. I actually did try it, don't get me wrong. I called up a few councils, and every time I called a council in New South Wales, they had a different way of calculating it. And they started asking me, have you got a site? And I said, look, I haven't got a site, because I was just doing my research and development. So they have a different way of doing it. Brisbane City Council I've dealt with, and the good part is there is only one council in Brisbane, so I know how Brisbane works. So Brisbane is pretty easy. They've got a formula where they give you a deduction for what was already on the site, and then they give you certain flat contributions per 2-bedroom unit or per 3-bedroom unit, and so on. So the Brisbane one is also pretty straightforward. So I think this is what we've already discussed, but VPO is again vegetation protection overlay with sites with lots of trees that fall under VPO, and you cannot put your desired dwellings without knocking the tree down, walk away, because they won't let you knock the tree down if it's in that area. Site history, search into the previous use of the site. If you are concerned that the site may be contaminated, you really need to find out what could be the reason. So, land value. Now, again, this is a very crucial component. I won't discuss this because I will discuss this with financial feasibility, because this is about getting to the residual value of land. And what you've got to remember is when you're conducting your financial feasibility, everything remains constant, including professional fees, construction value, permit fees, selling costs, etc. The only two variables in your feasibility study are land and the end sale value. So just remember, this is a very basic rule, which is the variable part. Everything else in the middle is going to stay constant. Doesn't matter where you're developing it, so long as if you're developing 3-bedroom townhouse, the cost of constructing a 3-bedroom townhouse will be the same in any part of Melbourne. But the land value and the end value will change, and I'll give you some good examples when we are doing feasibility here. So legals, when you get your legal, the contract of sale, which would have the copy of the title, it'll have the copy of the subdivision that title was in. That will show you all the easements. It will show you a lot of different things. What I want you to do is have a look at the due diligence ebook. If you haven't downloaded it, don't worry about it, because I will give you this due diligence ebook. I think I sent it to Ivan the other day. He was saying one of the link wasn't working, which I fixed now. And I don't think Ivan's in the class either today. But this is a 26 question due diligence checklist, and I want you to read this when you get a chance, and I will put the link for you to download all of this together. So I mean, it talks about all the things that I've already talked about, but what it does talk about is the fact that from points 15 to 26 relate to information in the vendor statement. A vendor statement or a disclosure statement. In Victoria, it's known as Section 32, or a disclosure statement is required under the Sale of Land Act to be given by the vendor to the purchaser. So where they disclose everything about the land. So, and when you do that, it is you got to look at all of these things: the covenants, the easements, the reservations in the Crown Grant, leases, restrictions on use, planning agreements, vendor ownership. Is the vendor the registered proprietor? Are there any mortgages on the property? Are there any caveats, court orders, or writs on the property? So if you read it's not a lot, but if you had this in front of you, anytime you were going through a contract of sale, it'll make you think of the things to pay attention to. And this is what, see, being a developer is you don't become a builder, you don't become an architect, you don't become an engineer. What you do become is an entrepreneur and a troubleshooter. So what you need to understand is the overall how all the moving parts are going to come together and make it work for me, because that's how I make my money. And if you know what all the other parts are and what the impact of each part is, you'll be able to troubleshoot it. You don't have to know everything. You have to be like Henry Ford. Henry Ford didn't know a lot of stuff, but he know how to press a button and get an answer for it. So that's what this is about, because there is just so much that there are specialized people specializing just in soil report. There are specialized people specializing just in engineering, in architecture, in landscape architecture, which is again different, hydraulics, hydraulic designs, civil engineering. You've got so many different parts that work that it's just impossible for you to know everything. But what you need to know is, okay, what this part means, who is responsible for this part, let me go find him and get the right advice from him, and then troubleshoot and make it happen. So I want you to go through this when I put it there, because we might not have enough time to be able to cover this, because this is already 8:30 now. Okay, data collection, sold history, for sale, and for rent. This is what I want to cover today, and I am going to the two parts because next week when we start our financial feasibility, this is what you would need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this out. So I wanted to show you things like these. Now what I do is I put together these maps all the time, and I do them anytime I'm doing feasibility, to be able to get confidence of what I can move, what I can sell stuff for. So this is the site that I was talking about, which is right next to the creek, 61 Nepean Highway. It's under contract, but I've got until 18th of this month to pull the pin on it, and so far it looks like that it'll be okay. My last port of call on this is that I've got the schematics on this side, and we might be able to put 8 on it. So because this is right next to the creek, it has a flood area, so we can't build in that section from the back, and there's a setback from the front. So if I go here, we are right at the beach, and if you live on this side, you can walk to this corner, and then you can walk to here and then cross here and go to the beach. So or the people who are living there, so we are making 2 townhouses facing the creek. It's beautiful there, and over here sometimes I've seen that people have their boats parked at the back, and they sit in the creek and there they go. So that's where we are in here. My last thing is that I've got to get the plans checked by the town planner. The architects have already designed the plans, and all we have to do is go and have them checked with a town. I might be able to show you them, show you the plans. Now, hang on one second. Town planning, yield concept here. That's the real life project. So that's how we are planning to build. So because the site has a fall, let me zoom in a little bit more. Because the site has a fall, we have 2 units facing the main Nepean Highway, and they would have balconies which will have views to the bay. We've got 4 units that go on the side, which are 3 level. So we've got garage on the ground floor, and then we've got living, and then we are giving each one a view, so that all of them have some sort of a view. So this one would have a view to the creek, and these 2 will have views to they might not be great views, but this is something that will add value to the development. And this one will have a balcony. So we've got car spaces here for, so if you can see, we've got car space. This is this area right here. So they've got this is again on there is no basement in this, because we didn't want to dig. Basement means it's going to cost you more money in construction, and because I'm in Seaford, my end value is not going to be 900,000. So I can't build over the top stuff there, but I've got to build something that families would want to go and live. So although I could have increased my yield by putting an apartment building over there, but I don't want to, because the cost will be more, and then I will not be able to achieve what I want to achieve. I also want to have a good product that people remember us by. And the 2 units that we have here will have all this huge massive courtyard. And if you look at, let's zoom in a little bit more. They will have all this as their courtyard or as their backyard, and they will have access to the creek. I'm not sure if you can fish there, but I've seen people fish there. I'm not sure if you'll eat that fish, but you can fish there and put it back in there. So how good is that? You can walk from here and just fish. And that's the driveway, that's the ground floor. Then we will have bedrooms, 8977 square meters, and the 4, this dotted line tells me these are just schematics. And the problem with this site, that the reason that we've not gone unconditional so far, although our CHMP plan, which was a cultural heritage management plan, that's come out all okay, but the reason we haven't gone unconditional with this is because if for whatever reason council knocked back 1 unit, this project won't work. It will be difficult to stack it. So now we are going to one of the a very famous and an authority town planning firm in this area. So to make sure that we must get 8, and if we get any kind of an inkling from them that there could be you could end up in weak hat, or the council may not allow this for whatever reason, I'm going to pull the pin on this in the next few days and not go ahead with it. It would have costed me about 20,000 if I don't go ahead with this. That means I've already spent that much money on the architecture and the plans, and so on. And the last one is the advice from the town planner. So yeah, so this is the site. But before I get into the site, what we do is, what I was trying to explain to you was that I plot all this data to figure out what everything is selling for. So if I click on something, it'll tell me 535, that's what it sold for, that's what it was, unit number 9. Area specialist Aspendale Gardens, forget that. Last price was 535. Days on the market was 59. Sale date was that. Now the dollar per square meter is sometimes incorrect because we don't get the exact size of the thing, but sometimes we do. So I leave it there, whether or not, I mean, when I click on something, I'll know whether or not it's correct or not. But it just gives me an idea. So it's telling me that the 2-betters go for 535, but they're really bad 2-betters, so to speak. So how do I do this? That's what I wanted to explain to you. So this is again Edithvale. So before I did the development in Edithvale, I did the same thing there. I had 89 houses, 39 units, and 30 townhouses mapped to figure out what they were selling it for, and then I compare that. And all of you can do that. And how do you do that? All you do is you will get these details. Hang on one second. I'll just bring the PowerPoint here. So this is the site. So just Google maps.google.com won't cut it. This is a different map engine by Google, where you can import data and play with different layers. Some of you might know it, the others who don't know it. When you get this, when you get the copies of these slides, you can go to this site, or you can take them down to go on this site. So so yeah, so how do I do it? Okay, here's how I do it. So what I usually try and do is get all this data from Real Estate Investor. Now some of you may not have it. Now I like Real Estate Investor because it lets me do this. It lets me export all kinds of data into Excel spreadsheet, and then I can analyze it, maybe add another field to it. So what I would suggest you to figure out is look at the data collection and analysis section, and also look at the spatial analysis section. And oops, it's kicked me out again. So there's a video here that explains how I analyze this data, and you can download some sample data that I've used, how the data collection PDF file from the course, how I actually plant this data onto onto Google Maps. And just remember that this may not have because earlier Google used to give us this under a different URL. So in that video there could be a different URL, but if you went to this URL, you will be able to import all of this data and analyze it. So at the time when I was looking at Baronia, I had all their sales put in to figure out, and I get this data from Real Estate Investor. Now if you don't have this data and you say, look, I only want to do one development and see how I go, and I don't want to spend all this money, don't spend all this money. We discussed a lot of free websites last week from where you can get your sales data. Yes, it will take you a fair bit of time to actually copy paste or copy that data into an Excel spreadsheet, But once you've got all that data in the spreadsheet that you want, you can import them in here, color code them, add different layers. Like you can add a layer to this and see what it looks like. So this is from either fail, for example. This is where our units are. So this is the site that I've developed. So I usually give it a different color so that it stands out. So I'm not looking at what this sold for. Wow, it sold for 2 bedroom 835. Okay, so it was probably an old house with an old house on it. But this is what I was doing, so I was looking at what everything else around me was selling for. So what I want to find out is, okay, townhouse, red color, 620. That's what it sold for. 2 bedroom, 3 bath, 1 parking, so on. This one also sold for 860 and so on. So what I'm trying to get some confidence on what they're going to sell for. Now you can get into data collection and analysis. The way I do them hasn't changed at all. I still do them the same way. And these two videos follow an example that you can watch and go through this. You can also watch the more videos on highest best possible use and site analysis. But those things I have just discussed in detail. If you want more detail, you can watch those videos again, or go here. So the last one is on due diligence checklist. So if you click on this, there is a due diligence checklist for all the things that we look at. So all you have to do is click on it to download it. What that looks like is, give me 1 second. Where is my file gone? Here. 1 second. That's what this looks like. And what I would want you to do is that anytime you start looking at a site, I want you to start filling this out. There are certain prompts here that you would want to do it, and maybe you can have your details, your comments, whatever you want against it, and start filling out as much details as you can to start checking off what you are doing. You can edit it, you can add your stuff to it. You can add stuff from the slides that I'm talking about today. And that would be the end of this session for tonight. If anyone's got any questions, press the hand button on your webinar and I will give you the mic and answer all your questions. So this was Mount Waverly. I had put this map together a very long time ago. Okay, Elaine, give me 1 second. This is the school zone. So do you see that pink line? That's the school zone of Mount Waverly Secondary College. The reason I put it there is to figure out what's going on there. The reason I created a grid right next to it is to be able to figure out what grid has better properties and what grid hasn't got better properties. And I was just trying to play with it. I haven't got the time to do that again and again. I've never used the grid analysis as much, but if you want to get see, people do grid analysis more when they want to do renovation. And the reason you do is you zoom in a lot, like you zoom in a fair bit. Oh, sorry, not in the golf course, but you zoom in and you mark out sections, different main streets, just to figure out the properties in there sell for what rate. And if there is a property that comes on the market that's less than the normal selling rate, you know that could be a reason, either it's dilapidated or it is old or whatever, and then you can ask that. Okay, I've got Elaine and William and Ashley asking questions. Okay, I'll start with Elaine. Yes, Elaine.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Can you hear me? You've talked about the contour map. Have you
Yeah.
got any link or any website we could use to find that out?
No. You won't get it on a website. You have to hire. You have to get it done. and a land surveyor can do it for you.
Oh, land surveyor, is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
land surveyor can do it for you. What that will tell you is how much the fall is on the site. Just give me 1 second. I might be able to pull one out because we just got one
Yep.
from on a site and show you what it looks like. It's a map which has a lot of lines on it. Um, hang on 1 second. Where is that map gone? Sorry, I should have kept one to show you guys, but I will pull one out very soon. Um,
Yeah, yeah, that's fine. So, yeah, I just wondered if there was any free website you could use to get that sort of,
no,
no?
no, that's done.
Yeah.
That's done by there are two servers that you need to get done, and as soon as you get into town planning, you must get them done. Um, Contour servers, it'll usually come with your indent survey. If you're in Queensland, it's called ident survey, which is called identification survey. Sorry, not indent, identification survey. And the re-establishment survey or the identification survey is the same thing. And what they do is the lancer would, before the architecture can start with anything, before the architect can start with anything at all, they will come to the site and they will measure everything, the datum points, where the site sits in relation to the back wall, in relation to all those different things, and that's when they will give you those drawings, um, and the architect, sorry, will then design based on that ident, because it has to be accurate. And I've run into a lot of trouble with this
Yeah.
for my Brisbane project. Okay, I'll put William on. I'll put thanks, Elaine. I'll put Will on because Will's hand. Ashley, I'll be with you in a second. I see you've taken your hand off there, but I've just unmuted Will. It just the mic just needs to go green. Okay, Will, you're. We can hear you now. Hello, Will. Okay, let's go. Ashley, would you still like to ask the question? I can unmute you. Yep. Yes,
I was
yes,
just
Ashley.
wondering, what about looking at rent for determining valuation that you can get in an area? Can you not look at rents and then work backwards via capitalization ratios or rental yields? The
You
reason I say that is because you have old houses, you have lands that can be developed, there's different sort of conditions which affect the price of a property. But with rents, you can see more clearly what the value of a particular configuration is.
You can, but what happens is when you go and start talking to different agents, you'll see rent prices would vary even with old houses based on the facilities that they offer. So
Right.
the house could be really old, but somebody could have renovated the kitchen recently, so they might be getting a little bit more. Or the house could be really old, but one of them could have gas ducted heating, but the other one might have stove heating or the old heater furnace heaters and stuff in there. So the rent would vary from that as well. It won't be that much, but anyone who spend a little bit more on renovations or offers better amenities to their tenants, they will want a little bit more.
Okay. All right.
Okay, thanks, Ashley. Okay, Will, are you still there? Will, hello. Okay. Okay, Neil, I'm just gonna unmute you now, and the mic goes green in a second. Yes, yes, Neil.
I just wanted to make some comment around when we're talking about stock coming onto the market
Yeah.
when you're doing your analysis. So I don't know what anyone else has experienced, but we've had a negative experience in that area where we actually still going through it at the moment. We completed, we built a duplex in a new housing estate, and at the time when we investigated the the availability in that area of rental properties was really quite low. And now at this point where we've finished our construction, majority of the stock has started to come onto the market, and as such, there's about 42 properties available for rent and a similar amount for sale at this point in time. So we're struggling to get a tenant. So I just really wanted to kind of clarify that point, because it's the first time we've experienced it, and what we didn't allow for was looking forward 8 or 9 months as to see what sort of stock would be coming onto the market.
Yeah. I've experienced that too, Neil. The Brisbane development that we started took 2.5 years to complete. When we started, the rent in that area was $475 a week for a 2-bedroom unit. And by the time I finished and I wanted to rent my unit, first of all, it was a 9-apartment building, so all 9 of them went on the market straight away, and everyone was struggling. Like there were three agents with 3 property management companies with their boards outside trying to win the same client in the same building. And it took a while. I mean, some of them got rented really quick, the ones that had better location and all of that. But I really had to struggle. I had to slash my rent to $390, from $475 a week to $390 just to put it on the market. And it happens when a whole glut of apartments and properties, they come on the market, the vacancy rate goes up. And usually it happens if it's taken a while from when you started doing the development, you went through the town planning, and when by the time you came back out and everything was done, you figured, gosh, it has so many different properties on the market. It's gonna be struggling. So what you need to do to not be able to get caught with something like this is to say you've got to make it a little bit attractive for your rental market. We have already started looking into solar to add to it, and the figure which is basically zero electricity bill, and your unit will then stand out from the rest of the development in there. I haven't seen a lot of developers doing this at the moment, but we went to the home show and we found this guy who was supplying this 13 kilowatt unit with solar installed, everything for 13,000 or something, and we wanted to negotiate with him to get it under 10 grand for 30 of them. And if we can manage to do that, we can sign something with him so that we can, to us it costs 10 grand. But if you look at the perceived value of this thing, whoever wants to buy the property, even if you've got 40 properties on the market, the tenant will look at your property favorably, and if even the buyers will look at your units favorably because you've got something extra in there. So
it's a problem for us. We're now about 5 weeks complete with the both properties available to rent and struggling to get a tenant. So we've just dropped our rental from about $330 down to under $300. And offering?
Are you offering blinds and fly screens, and I don't know if you need a fan or if you need an aircon or.
It's they're quite highly spec properties, so they're very attractive. It's just that majority of the estate's built to quite a good spec. So there's just that glut, So we offered some incentives and dropped the rent and see what happens.
Yeah, and you would say that this area has now become more investor dominated.
Yeah.
So a lot of people when they're on the market altogether. Look, it's not an exact science, but it's if you know them beforehand, you can be prepared to shift gears a lot quicker than a lot of other developers there. So sometimes you just have to deal with it.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right. All the best, Neil.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I still have a hand up from. Okay, it just says audio pin not entered. Anyway. Okay. Will, there's some issue with he wants to ask a question, but there's some issue with it. Will, can you type your question in and send it across. Because if I get your question, then I can address your question at least. I think you've gone on to try to join the chat for the phone. Anybody else who would like to ask a question before we end for tonight? Okay, John. Yes, John.
Yeah, hi guys. Listen, this is not a question, but just a reminder for those of us who have responded or want to catch up on Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. at the Bridge Hotel in Mordialloc. Look forward to seeing the 5 of us catching up and having a chat about what's been going on and being all positive about everything.
Wow, Bridge Hotel in Mordialloc at 3 p.m.
Sunday, and you're welcome also.
What I'm thinking is that if I can, I will be there. The thing is, my family hardly gets to see me, and I get firing from the left, right, and center. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put it in my calendar, and I'm gonna get reminded for it 5 hours before it actually happens. So 3 p.m. Bridge Hotel. I know where it is.
Yeah.
And if I can, then I'll see you guys there. Whoever's coming there.
That'd be great. Thus far, there's 5 of us, so it's the good start.
All right, fantastic.
Thanks, Amber.
No worries at all, John. Take care.
You too.
Okie doke. Anybody else who would like to ask a question? Otherwise, we will end for tonight. Okay, I don't think I can reach Will. His hand is still up. As you can see here, his hand is still up, but I can't see him. But anyway, I'm gonna stop the webinar for tonight, and I'll see you guys next week.